I am here with Frances Spielhagen. She is one of the instructors in our online learning community, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her courses in the coming semester. Hi, Frances.
Hi, nice to see you.
Good to see you too. So we're just going to give parents a little bit of a feel for who you are and what your background is, your teaching style, those sorts of things. So why don't we get started? Just tell parents a little bit about your teaching background and your expertise.
Okay, so my teaching background, I have been an educator for over 50 years, 34 of them as a teacher in public schools in the K-12 environment, primarily grades 7 through 12, although I started my career as a third grade teacher. In New York City, I started in New York City and then moved up to the Hudson Valley. In 2000, and I should tell you that I am certified, New York State certified in Latin, in English, and social studies. And I've taught all of those courses, but through the entire career, I always taught Latin. And that is interesting because when I was a college student, my advisor told me I would never get a job with a Latin certificate because Latin was dying. And boy, I showed her. So in 2002, I earned my PhD in educational leadership and curriculum, and I became a teacher educator at Mount St. Mary College in Newburgh, New York, which is where I am right now, finishing my 18th and final year actually there. And so I had a real commitment to making Latin acceptable and palatable to younger kids, because I think the younger you are when you encounter a language, the more likely you're going to understand that language in a way that is not simply a transfer of knowledge. And so the Cecilia series was born. So that's my educational background and a little bit about the birth of the Cecilia series.
Excellent. So can you just give us a little brief overview of the courses you'll be teaching in the coming semester?
Well, okay, so I created the book Ecce Cecilia in Verus, and I'll be teaching that course. This is the first in the series, and it's intended to introduce the children to the activities and the fun and games that Cecilia and her brother have, who they are, and basic Latin. It is absolutely the most pleasing thing to see youngsters talking in Latin now. They know how to say, hello, my name is, I live here, this is my father, this is my mother. And that's what they get out of Latin 1. We find out where Cecilia lives in ancient Rome. And so there's a heavy dose of Roman culture. And so Latin 1 is the basic. Latin 2, or course 2, takes Cecilia and Verus to the Forum. So that allows us to learn about the Roman gods, to see pictures of the Forum. And the wonderful thing about Royal Fireworks, and I'm so glad that I chose them as a publisher, is that the illustrations are just so good in explaining what the text is about. Because the whole philosophy of the book is that we learn a language by inductively taking it in. Latin traditionally has always been taught deductively. Here are the forms, memorize them, give them back to me, and now read. This takes that and turns it around. Let's read, let's see where, and let's speak it as much as you can. And of course, we know it's not like a modern language that's spoken, but we can use it. So let's read it, let's speak it, and then let's take from there what are the forms. Because as I tell my students, no parent says to a 2-year-old, darling, you're not using the past tense. You need to say, I did this rather than I do it. We don't do that to children. If children need to be corrected in their speech, we naturally give them the correct form, and then they induce it inductively into their lexicon. You notice that I held up this book. This is the couple of years ago I said, I think this could be a graphic novel for middle school kids. And so this version is basically volume 1 and 2 in one book, and all of the there are about 5 illustrations on a page. And the reason for that, the this is that for the older child, they can handle more than one image, whereas for the younger child, for which the original book was written, it's one image, one line of Latin. So you can see I've really thought it through. I want you to look at the picture, understand what's going on, and let's just say the Latin. There is a book 3. It's all about Pompeii, and I am told that book 3 will be out momentarily. So I'm anxious to see what that looks like, because the illustrator does a wonderful job. However, Latin Course 3, so Latin 1 is the first book, Latin 2 is the second book, and it's all based on that, so there's a basis for there. But Latin 3, or Course 3, is something new. Tom asked me, would I be interested in teaching a course in Latin poetry for older students who have mastered some Latin? And my answer was yes. And why? Because my first master's degree was in Latin poetry. And so I immediately got myself a book, and nerd that I am, I have been reading through the works of Horace and Catullus and Virgil in anticipation of teaching that course to students that have had some Latin and are ready to talk about the real literature. The text that I've chosen has small passages with explanation, of course, but it's my job to do the explaining. So I'm very excited about it. I feel strongly that Latin has certainly informed my life. I'm fluent in a couple of languages, modern languages, and I think Latin has been key. Certainly has increased my English lexicon. But I have seen how students grow with the Latin. And we've mentioned the Michael Clay Thompson series in our classes, and we know about them. The roots of those words come from the Latin. So some of what I do with the students is, so what's this word, and what's a good English word you think that comes from it? So they're getting the derivation from the Latin, which is what the intention is.
It's so exciting to me. One of the best things about Royal Fireworks Online Learning is that we get such specific instructors that have such niche understanding of things. And these kids have an opportunity to learn from somebody as experienced as yourself in something as specific as Latin poetry. That's a very cool thing. And in addition to that, all of the crossover that they're getting from Latin with their vocabulary. And I've seen a lot of things just on the sidelines, seeing children understanding biology words and all sorts of other disciplines that are getting a lot out of Latin. So that's very exciting for all these kids to get.
It's really great fun to see them turn on to it.
When we're talking about the students who are a good fit for your class, is there an age or an experience level? How would a parent determine whether or not their child is ready for your courses?
Well, they obviously need to read. They have to be able to read. I have said for course 1, 8, 9 is about right. And younger than that, I'm thinking, even if, I know we have very, very, very bright children in our base, but I would say 8, 9 is the maturity level, and then moving on up from there. I have had one of the courses where I had the spread between 8 and 13, and I had a good crew of 12 and 13-year-olds, and they're their own game. And I love them because I love middle school kids. But you have to teach them differently from the way you teach little ones. And so I've said to Royal Fireworks, if we're going to have that split, I think I'd like them in different sections, simply so I can meet their needs.
How does a typical course go when a child enters your online classroom? What does a day in a Latin class look like?
Okay, well, I say hello, and how's your week been, and so forth, and then I say, okay, now we're going to be in Latin. We're going to start thinking in Latin. So I greet them in Latin, "Salve discipuli," and they respond, "Salve magistra," and that's from week 2. Week 1, I teach them that. Okay, week 2, second class, they learn how to say that. Then we go immediately to the storyline, and I have the illustrations electronically in a PowerPoint. So I pull that up with the line of Latin. The philosophy I base it on is oh, God knows, maybe some pedagogy I learned back a million years ago, or maybe just learning it from doing it. We read it 3 times. I read it twice, and then the third time they repeat. And what I tell them is the first time is to get your brain in gear. The second is for you to pay closer attention to get ready. And then the third is you read it. And by the time we read it the third time, and the sentences are short, by the time we read it the third time, their brains are already processing the new whatever it is. And then I say, okay, look at the picture, what's going on in the picture, and what do you think is happening? And then I don't have them translate. Translate means I take the Latin and I put it immediately or completely into specific English. And sometimes people stumble over that, but if I say to them, what is the Latin saying to you? Oh, well, the Latin is saying, this is my brother. Oh, okay. And then I say, what do you think the word for brother is in that sentence? And it's pretty simple. If it says, hic est frater meus, it's pretty much frater. And there's always somebody who'll say, oh, frater. Oh, why do you think so? And then as the course goes on, I will ask them things like, what do you think a verb is? Where's the verb in that sentence? How do I know it's a verb? And then here are some more verbs. And so basically building on the story to give them more. And by the end of the course, first course 1, which is where we're at right now, anybody who knows Latin is going to be shocked to hear that they can conjugate first and second conjugation verbs in the present tense, and they can decline first declension nouns. That's about 15 weeks for a bunch of 8, 9, 10-year-olds, 1 hour a week. That's a lot. That's a lot. And then they ask you
to me.
and then they ask you for more. And then they ask you for more. And so their enthusiasm, because they want to be there. My goal is to make them comfortable with me. So again, catering to my constituency. I'm grateful because they seem to be responding very well.
So when you give them more of this, does that translate into homework in between?
Oh yeah, they have homework every week.
So what is the homework expectation, and is there parent involvement that needs to happen? What can kids expect between classes?
Okay, so homework generally is 2 or 3 exercises, 1 related directly to the reading and 1 an extension from the reading. And the extension could be derivation. What are some English words that come from these Latin words? The extension can be, you notice that we did this verb. Can you conjugate this verb? Very simple. And then the reading thing is basically what went on in the reading, answering questions or filling in the blanks where I give them the Latin shell and they have to put the correct word in, and they can use their books. In addition to that, I have learned to put in a challenge question every week, something a little bit more rigorous, because there are always those who want to respond to the challenge. Is there parent involvement? Well, that depends on the parent. I can tell you that when I'm teaching, I know their parents are in the room. I can tell from the way the kids are looking over to the side. So parents are actively involved, and that's a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. I have not seen and the kids have to send me the homework in email. So we meet on a Monday. By Sunday night, I should see it in email. What does that do for me? It allows me to cater the next lesson to their understanding level. And so I have the lesson structured, but then I look at what they do. And if they need reinforcement in one thing or another, I can go back to the lesson and adjust that, which is just plain good teaching. The only time that I hear from parents is if the child has special needs. And if the child has special needs and needs a scribe or needs something, I will hear from the parents in that regard. When I send the email to the kids, I copy them to the parents as well, so that the parents know what's going on. And then generally, as I would as a regular classroom teacher, midway, I send the parents here's where we are email. And then usually at the end, I send a thank you for sharing your children with me email. Because I do believe that having students involved in something like this it requires parent commitment. I can tell you that last summer I had one little girl who took the class from all over Europe. Her parents were traveling, and so she took the class from cafes in Paris, London, Amsterdam, taking the class at 10 o'clock at night.
So if parents want to contact you before the new semester begins to find out anything specific about their child and whether or not you are the right fit for them, where can they reach you?
Well, I have an email address, especially for the Latin course. It's the name of the book, Ecce Caecilia @gmail.com.
Is there anything else you want to say to parents before we wrap this up?
Thank you for sharing your kids with me. And the kids are wonderful. There's just no getting around it. The kids are wonderful.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to the parents here, and definitely looking forward to your next semester with the online school.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this.